A lot of people saw my interview with Alan Dershowitz on Saturday. I hope the network latency is not too bad over here, but I wanted to come up to Jeffrey Epstein's place to talk about this because the video's gone somewhat viral, but there's a lot to it. And people who saw the title of this video are going to know that I've now taken on the opinion that Alan Dershowitz is a liar, he's a coward, and he's a social engineer. But I mean, that is something that a lot of people probably presumed before. The thing is, he's also wrong about his legal opinion with regard to mandatory vaccinations as they pertain to the current COVID-19 outbreak. And a lot of people have been talking about this, a lot of people have been doing videos about this, but I don't think that I've seen anybody yet who quite fully gets it, including Professor Dershowitz. And I wanted to speak to him about it again, but as you might imagine, he has declined. People are going to remember that I first met Alan Dershowitz outside the courthouse at 500 Pearl Street after a hearing in Giuffre v. Dershowitz. This is a case where one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims has alleged that Alan Dershowitz had sex with her. Dershowitz says he never met the woman. She said he's a liar. Dershowitz said she's a liar. Alan Dershowitz has said that Virginia Roberts Giuffre is a liar. And then Virginia Roberts Giuffre has sued Alan Dershowitz for that defamatory statement. That's the nature of the lawsuit. So that's where I met him, and I became intrigued with Alan Dershowitz initially because I'm just generally interested in people who are falsely accused or claim that they're falsely accused, because I, since becoming a social media, whatever it is people consider me, putting out videos and being seen by many thousands of people on YouTube, I have been accused of many things that I know I haven't done. So when someone says that they've been accused of something that they haven't done, I'm interested in hearing about that. And also when Professor Dershowitz wrote that book, Guilt by Accusation, you know, I agree that this is a problem where people, okay, we are live, so that's good, but I want to preserve the network bandwidth here. I'm doing everything I can to make this live video smooth for everybody. If there are any problems, if I disconnect, the full video will be uploaded to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Very important for people to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. I don't have corporate sponsors. I don't have anybody telling me what to say. I actually object to people telling me what to do and what to say because I don't know why. It's just something people shouldn't do. But let's get back to Professor Dershowitz and how wrong he is about what he's saying about mandatory vaccinations. See, the reason I started at Jeffrey Epstein's house is because not only is it important that we discuss how Alan Dershowitz is wrong, and I believe I could defeat him in this argument with no law degree, no Harvard training, none of that nonsense. And I think he demonstrated that in his actions on Saturday and today. He's a coward because he won't even face me and discuss this with me again, and we'll talk about that as well. But let's talk about what he said first. He said that the government has the right to plunge a needle into your arm, pull you out of your house, force you to be vaccinated if it's in the interest of the greater good, the common good, public health, etc. So he spoke specifically about the police powers that states have over us. And he advised me to look up a case called, what is it, Johansson? No, I'm Jacobson versus Massachusetts. So this police powers thing, it says that the state has the power over people to do the sort of things that he's talking about, but the power varies. The extent of this power may vary based on the subject matter over which it is exercised. These types of statements are put into law because law is all about argumentation. Law is a construct of man, and it differs greatly from medical science. We'll talk about that too. The essential part of this that I find important is that the power employed, it may not be arbitrary or oppressive. It's got to actually have a purpose in relation to the public health, public safety, or other matters. So they can't just arbitrarily decide that something is needing to be done and then force you to do it, like vaccination. So the case that he spoke about, and I've used it in today's image. This is an image of, I think the guy's name is Henson Jacobson. He was a Swedish immigrant who had moved to the United States and was living in Massachusetts. And in 1904, the law in Massachusetts was you had to be vaccinated against smallpox. Smallpox was a huge problem. It was affecting tons of people. When it first started, medical science was just obviously not well understood. I don't know if people realize this, but actually the very first vaccine ever created was the smallpox vaccine. And the way it came about is a farmer, I forget the guy's name, he noticed that some of the farm workers, the farm workers that had been exposed to cowpox were not contracting smallpox. So from this, they developed the smallpox vaccine, and this was the first generation of vaccines. I've been watching a lot of videos and reading a lot of documents, not only about law, but about immunology. And I'm not saying that I know anything about it. I'm just trying to glean some basic knowledge. So one of the things that I believe I've come to understand, I was looking at this interesting graphic from Precision Nanosystems. So nanotechnology does play a legitimate role in modern immunology and development of vaccines. It's an important role. But basically, one of the things I got out of this presentation was that there have been essentially 4 stages in the evolution of vaccine technology. The first stage involved this, the use of essentially a live attenuated vaccine, some inactivated or otherwise weakened version of the virus itself. So that was that was like what the smallpox vaccine was. They got this actual, pathogen and did something to weaken it, introduced it to the immune system. People's immune systems developed antibodies, and then you were inoculated. But as Jacobson pointed out, certain people with potentially genetic predispositions to become sick from this stuff, maybe they had weak immune systems or whatever, there were some safety risks associated with those vaccines. So the next stage of vaccine technology involved subunit vaccines. And I want to speak to more immunologists to understand this better, but my understanding of what that subunit vaccine was is that they would take parts of the virus and introduce those to the immune system so that you didn't have a complete virus and it wasn't going to get you sick, but it was enough that the immune system could train itself to defend against the virus when it encountered it. And I don't know if this is for sure, but there are some vaccines, remember, that you get them in stages, like you come back a few weeks later, maybe they're giving you different parts of it at different times to slowly expose your immune system. I mean, that seems to make logical sense. The third stage of evolution in vaccine technology involved, DNA was better understood, and recombinant is the third stage. I don't really understand what that involved, but it had to do with manipulating DNA and more advanced technology, but also potentially risks. I also believe that as they moved further and further away from introducing the live virus or the attenuated virus or the thing that was very close to the virus, they weren't getting the type of immune response that they wanted. So this is when adjuvants and things like that were added to these different types of vaccines to provoke an immune response. And a lot of people have had some questions about those adjuvants. They're often aluminum and mercury and things that people have associated with other health problems. I want to speak, as I said, to immunologists, people like Del Bigtree, who are experts and have spoken to other experts. Not to say that Del is an immunologist, but he knows a lot about this stuff and he's done a lot of good work on it. But the final, or I should say, the stage of vaccine development that we are in now, the fourth stage, involves messenger RNA. This is a new type of vaccine. And as I understand it, messenger RNA is a component of genetic material. It's basically like the recipe for a cell. Our cells divide, create new cells. This is how we grow. This is how we live, old cells die, and new cells are created, etc. So this RNA is essentially like the recipe book for a cell. And the way viruses work is that they attack your cells, they inject their own genetic material, and they take over the cells. So your blood cells, your lung cells, your kidney cells, whatever they're affecting, they're no longer duplicating themselves. They're producing these unwanted virus cells, and they become like a virus factory. And this leads to sickness and ultimately death in these deadly viruses. So what these messenger RNA vaccines hope to achieve, and this is the type of vaccine that is being contemplated in this Operation Warp Speed. Part of the benefit of these mRNA vaccines is that they can be developed more quickly than traditional vaccines. And there are a lot of videos you can watch about messenger RNA vaccines. Most of them are a lot of videos you can watch about these messenger RNA vaccines. And most of them are produced by this company Moderna, which is basically the vaccine manufacturer. And I got a very interesting video earlier today. Moderna's stock, when I was looking at it, this is going to make people laugh. So their stock was performing very well. $66.62. It's just a coincidence, of course. But so Moderna is developing this new type of vaccine. And when you watch videos from them, there's a lot of promise, obviously new technology. I don't presume that these scientists and doctors are creating this stuff to try to hurt people. I think most of the people who are involved in this have good intentions. They want to cure diseases, etc. But when you watch videos from other scientists, other doctors, other epidemiologists, have I been saying endocrinologists? I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. These are my observations. Honest doctors are telling us that even though there is promise in this messenger RNA technology, no vaccine has ever been developed with it before, and there has been no test of it whatsoever. So they want to inject something into you that is going to change the DNA in your cells, that is going to cause your cells to produce some new thing. It's intended to be the spike protein from coronavirus. What they're doing is essentially sequencing the genetic material of the coronavirus, sort of reverse engineering the recipe, and then delivering that recipe to your cells so that they can create the spike proteins of the coronavirus, with the theory that if and when you encounter the coronavirus, your immune system will be familiar with it and will be able to defend you against it. But the honest scientists tell us that since it's never been tested, unexpected consequences, side effects, and outcomes are highly likely. As a matter of fact, it's a virtual guarantee. Even Fauci says they don't know if the vaccine will work. So this is where Dershowitz's argument falls down. It's not about the case law being 105 years old. It's about the vaccine that Jacobson was refusing to take. The vaccine itself was 109 years old. The smallpox vaccine was initially developed in 1796. Jacobson v. Massachusetts was adjudicated in 1905. So we had 109 years of medical data, peer review, I'm sure doctors argued back and forth. Millions of people had been inoculated with the vaccine. And what I'm getting at is there was a large body of information about the safety and efficacy of the smallpox vaccine. So based on this consensus among scientists, because there is no such thing as settled science, and medicine is science. It's never settled. Someone could discover something tomorrow about the human body that is unknown today that could change our entire understanding of medical science. And again, any honest doctor will tell you that that's correct. The concept of settled science comes from social engineering lawyers like Alan Dershowitz. There's a concept called settled law, and that is what Jacobson v. Massachusetts is. The Supreme Court got together, argued about what this guy was saying, decided he was wrong, and that's the law. Now they refer back to that. And this is becoming very relevant because Jacobson v. Massachusetts, even though it's 115 years old, close in age to Dershowitz himself, both of them are outdated and obsolete. This Jacobson v. Massachusetts case law, it was a precedent that was referenced in 2020 in a lawsuit in Texas having to do with coronavirus. People can look it up. It was this argument about abortions being essential or non-essential. Point is, this Jacobson v. Massachusetts is definitely going to be coming back into the news, and it's going to be spoken about and argued about in court. So, see, I believe that Alan Dershowitz is involved in a social engineering play, and there are a number of cues that cause me to believe that. Now, there's some more things I want to show people because, you know, a lot of people were emailing me that Tucker Carlson had Alan Dershowitz on there last night. They played my clip. They obscured the logo for Crowdsource the Truth. They muted my voice when I was trying to contradict or question Mr. Dershowitz, which might leave a viewer wondering if I support his opinion or what. But Fox News is not our friends, not my friend, not your friend. And, well, first let me, I got a lot of videos loaded here that I want to share with people. So I contacted Professor Dershowitz earlier today. I sent him an email this morning because he had put out a tweet that people were sending him hateful anti-Semitic threats. Some people don't like the word anti-Semitic. Hatred towards Jewish people. You know, all kinds of vile things. And I've gotten some of that myself. So I sent Professor Dershowitz an email this morning telling him that, you know, to the extent that anything that I said had something to do with that, obviously I was sorry. And I wanted to discuss this with him. He had specifically instructed me to look up Jacobson v. Massachusetts, and I did, and I determined that his conclusions were wrong. And I still am in that place. Let me, so Dershowitz did not write back to me from that email, not surprising for most people, but then I heard him on Del Bigtree, the High Wire with Del Bigtree. Great show. Del's a great guy. In my experience, he's always been fair and kind to me. I think he's working hard to do the right thing. And he is somebody who left the world of mainstream journalism because they wouldn't allow him to tell the truth. They didn't want to publish stories that were detrimental to their pharmaceutical advertisers, so Del left. Anyway, Del has a new interview up with Alan Dershowitz. It's kind of a debate with Dershowitz. And again, Dershowitz has succeeded in sort of steering smart people like Del away from the important thing here. And don't misunderstand what I'm saying. The concept of mandatory vaccination is extremely important. However, Alan Dershowitz is not the president. I don't think the president's home right now. Alan Dershowitz is not the president. He's not a Supreme Court justice. He's not even a member of Congress. He's just an angry douche spewing his opinion on Fox News and lying about me. So when I saw him on Del Bigtree, he said that I had sprung it on him, that the interview was initially, they were talking about my interview. And although Dershowitz didn't name me directly, maybe this is defamation by implication. And obviously, since I am a journalist, a documentary filmmaker, a YouTube personality who's bringing people news and insights, my reputation and people's trust in me is an essential part of my business. So him attacking that could be defamatory, I don't know. But anyway, after I heard him say that, I called him because I hadn't heard a response to the email. Let me play that call for everybody.
Hello.
Professor Dershowitz, it's Jason Goodman. How are you?
What can I do for you?
Well, I just wanted to see if you received my email that I had sent you this morning. I saw some of the tweets you were putting out with the horrible statements that people were making, and certainly if anything that I said or did contributed to that, I feel awful and wanted...
Yeah.
Well,
it's okay. But I have no interest in further discussing it.
Well, there's something that we must discuss because you've just accused me of something in your interview with Del Bigtree that's not accurate. You accused me... You accused me of springing a question on you, and you told Del that his questions were thoughtful, which implies that mine were not.
When you just rail about it on your show.
Well, I'd rather talk to you. Now, that was not very polite or professional of Mr. Dershowitz, in my opinion. He blames me for things that rude messages that other people have sent him, people who I don't know and have nothing to do with. That's absurd. I think probably his own moronic statements resulted in people sending him hateful messages. I don't condone that. But for him to say that I had anything to do with that, I think is wrong. And the fact that he is afraid to come back on the show and talk about legal precedents that he claims allow the state to plunge a needle into your arm against your will, he's just wrong. He's just wrong. Because what would first need to be done would be to establish by a medical consensus that the vaccine was not oppressive or arbitrary. Testing an untested vaccine on someone, forcing them to be a test subject, is of course arbitrary. There's no evidence. There's no medical or scientific evidence that an untested vaccine will actually prevent a disease. Dershowitz also contradicted himself and said a bunch of stupid, medically unsound stuff, like if there was a vaccine just for you. No one is developing vaccines just for one person. The whole concept of a vaccine is that it prevents you from getting sick, and then therefore you can't spread it. Dershowitz was mixing the concept of medical proof, scientific proof, with that of legal proof, and you cannot do that. So let's also talk about the whole nature. They've even got me talking now about Dershowitz and the whole mandatory vaccine thing, which I don't believe was the most important aspect of our conversation. That's not to say that mandatory vaccination isn't important. What I'm saying is Dershowitz's opinion about mandatory vaccination is unimportant because he plays no role. And frankly, if he's going to go argue at the Supreme Court, I'll argue against him. Maybe the Supreme Court won't let me do that. I don't really care. He obviously failed in his argument against me the other day and refuses to re-engage because he knows he would fail again because his argument is stupid. And if he actually believes it, that might make him stupid. But I don't think he believes it. I think he's saying that because he's there to put out a message. Think about this. The part of the interview that I want people to focus on is all the stuff that he said about Jeffrey Epstein, the relationship to Bill Clinton, the Rothschilds, Bill Gates, Harvard, Charles Lieber. See, this is the part I believe he's recalling that was sprung on him, but it actually wasn't. It was all quite related because Charles Lieber has been arrested and indicted by the Department of Justice. And he's one of the world's leading experts in nanotechnology. And we know that these vaccine companies are using nanotechnology. Even there's a lot of benefits potentially to nanotechnology for medicine. I've been going down this road of, looking at Harvard articles where they're telling us they've made transistors that are semiconductors, transistors, whatever the language was. They've made computer components that are smaller than viruses, so they could potentially assemble a computer inside your body. And who knows what that would do? They've told us they can make the Wyss Institute, which is also at Harvard. And Hans-Jörg Wyss was accused of sexual assault. He gave Harvard another $125 million. They looked the other way. That's really weird. Sounds like somebody else we know who's visited Harvard quite a lot, who gets accused of sexual assault and nothing happens. People should remember, if you haven't seen the full interview, definitely go back and take a look at it. Epstein hangs out at Harvard a lot. Here he's pictured with Dershowitz on the left side of the frame, and Larry Summers, then president of Harvard, on the right side of the frame. These guys have been out to dinner. They know each other pretty well. As Dershowitz said to me in the interview, the notion that Dershowitz is unaware that Jeffrey Epstein has been accused of operating a sexual blackmail entrapment ring and has ties to intelligence. Epstein said he had never heard that. That is absurd. That is flatly absurd. He could have said that's never been proven, and that might have been a sound statement, but to say he's never heard of it, I don't believe that. I just don't. And to say that I sprung this question about vaccination on him, that's a lie. People can go back and look. I was asking him about Andrew Cuomo's right, whether or not it was constitutionally legitimate, for Andrew Cuomo to say people no longer have the right to assemble. They didn't close the park. They said you can't assemble. So that is what I'm saying is a violation of the First Amendment, and that is oppressive and arbitrary until Andrew Cuomo can prove, oh wait, my second stop, until Andrew Cuomo can prove that standing 6 feet away from somebody is going to cure the disease or prevent the disease. I find that to be an arbitrary decree from a communist or a possible communist. And I mean, everything they're doing makes no sense. They're letting people out of jail who have already been convicted, which the NYPD tells us there have been an alarming number of re-arrests. They're letting those people out of jail to prevent them from getting and spreading coronavirus while they are simultaneously taking people on the street who aren't social distancing or wearing masks or whatever, ripping their children away from mothers, picking up guys and smashing them on their face. Did people see that video? In response to accusations of racism, NYPD decided to beat up a white guy. They smashed his face on the street. You could see it on NBC News. People were saying, in the crowd, people were saying, is that guy still alive? They slammed him on his face so hard. It was ridiculous. Here, this is, I'm right here. I've been keeping the camera. This is interesting stuff here. Rockefeller Center, a lot of weird, oh yeah, Rockefellers. So I don't know, people can look at this imagery. It's pretty cool, I think, but strange. I don't know what it all means. So I was asking Dershowitz about the constitutional legality of Cuomo saying you're not allowed to assemble. And then he volunteered, let me be clear, through the police powers, the state has the right to, grab you against your will and jam this thing. He brought that out. I didn't spring that on him. I believe he thinks I sprung the Jeffrey Epstein stuff on him, but I want people to watch it again and notice, see, he's not in court, so he's got a different style of argumentation than he would in court where he's under rules and can't interrupt everything I say. When I mention Charles Lieber, he's like, never heard of him. It's like, well, shut up and listen to me for a second and I'll explain to you who the guy is and why I think your pervy ex-client might have something to do with him. And by the way, why didn't Alan Dershowitz say to me, hey, we're here to talk about the Constitution, General Flynn, and Andrew Cuomo. Attorney-client privilege survives the death of the client. It would be inappropriate for me to speak about Jeffrey Epstein. He could have said that. Sorry, people will now say I made the 666 sign. He could have said that, and I would have had nothing to say. Attorney-client privilege, you can't violate that. He didn't have to say anything about Epstein. The fact that he said anything about Epstein, in my view, indicates that he wanted to tell a story. He wanted to put out a certain very specific message about Jeffrey Epstein, and all of this attention going onto his dumb, incorrect opinion about mandatory vaccination relative to COVID-19, relying on Jacobson v. Massachusetts as the case law, which is invalid in this case, doesn't apply. This is a new and substantially different situation that's going to need to be looked at again, and I'll be there at the Supreme Court if Alan Dershowitz wants to open his offensive lying mouth, and I'll have something to say to him. But the things that he did tell us about Jeffrey Epstein were quite interesting. He said he was initially introduced to Jeffrey Epstein by Linda Rothschild, and here she is, standing with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And I guess that's her husband. I don't know who that other guy is. People will know. And he also said that at a dinner at Linda Rothschild's house, he was then reintroduced to Epstein on the phone by the president himself. People are going to recall this James Alefantis Instagram post, which shows David Brock hanging out with Linda Rothschild. And people know that David Brock is involved in Media Matters for America, right? Is that it? Or I think that's the one. Podesta, Brock, all these guys. It was interesting. Before Dershowitz went on to Fox News, this ridiculous cartoon was released. And this thing got like 100,000 views the first day it was out. Everybody is... not everybody, I should say, social engineers become fascinated with my observation of the number of views that things get because they think I'm jealous. I'm not jealous at all. I am quite excited to have the number of people watching Crowdsource the Truth and the videos that I make. I didn't do this to become famous or be popular. I did this because I think our country is in a major, major problem, and I wanted to share information and I wanted to get to the bottom of things, and I saw a lot of people putting out news and things on YouTube who didn't know what the hell they're doing, including a social engineer who hijacked my video and tweeted it out. So how does a dope, and I'm not going to name this guy because he's just such a dope, I don't even want to give him the promotion, but he had less than 10,000 followers on Twitter, took that Dershowitz saying, oh, let me be clear, the state has a right to plunge a thing into your arm, took that clip, put it out on Twitter without my logo, and he's admitted this in a direct message that he cropped out the logo. Well, why would he do that? Could it be that they recognized, holy cow, Dershowitz said some things in this interview that we don't want said? And David Brock, perhaps, or someone like David Brock, could activate a network of social engineers and tell them, look, here's what we need to do. We need to attenuate this. We need to reduce the reach. We need to not have this become something that gets Crowdsource the Truth or Jason Goodman more notoriety, more coverage. We need to shut this down. So clip out the logo, then less people will go to Crowdsource the Truth. Just show the part about Dershowitz's dumb, incorrect opinion, and don't, we're going to distract everybody away from all the stuff about Epstein infiltrating the high-tech community at Harvard and the abuse of, access to all these people, foundations, shuffling money around, doing all this kind of thing. And let's start socially engineering this so we can regain control of this message and focus it on Dershowitz's stupid opinion, which, by the way, he's carefully modified in certain ways in his interview with Tucker Carlson and the interview with Del Bigtree to make it seem, slightly less objectionable. But again, it doesn't matter. Dershowitz's opinion does not matter. Even if he's called upon to argue for this ridiculousness, I hope there are a lot of lawyers who will rise up and argue against him. So here's the second spot on my tour right now. By the way, I know this is a complicated video to be running outside, but a lot of people have been missing the walk and talk. So I'm back over here at News Corp. And it's important for people to remember, here's some cops. Let's see if I get my face smashed. I'm glad I'm live. But it's important for people to remember that News Corporation, owned by Rupert Murdoch, owns both Fox News and the New York Post. Do you guys work for Fox News or the New York Post?
No, sorry.
You work for Fox News? No, okay. So anyway, Rupert Murdoch owns News Corp, he owns Fox News, he owns the New York Post. We got Alan Dershowitz coming on Crowdsource the Truth. Well, here's a bunch of cops standing closer than 6 feet to each other, not wearing masks. I wonder if they'll beat each other up. Hi, you guys. How's it going? So Dershowitz comes on to Crowdsource the Truth, says a bunch of stuff that they don't really want said. So now what do? They put him on Tucker Carlson, they cover my logo, they give Dershowitz another opportunity to say what he's going to say. But here's what I want people to remember. So far, it seems that the New York Post is the clearinghouse for all Epstein information. They're the ones that broke the story that he was dead. They're the only ones to get a photograph of him on the gurney, which I still say doesn't look like him. And when I started talking about the New York Post publishing stories that were obviously false, Leah Safian is the name of the attorney for Ghislaine Maxwell, who I spoke with. And she's not her main attorney. She is an attorney who seemed to be working with Ghislaine Maxwell. Maybe she's just a friend. But the point is the New York Post ran a story saying a bystander took this photo, and they had a whole lot of seeming nonsense. It seemed like nonsense, and when I ran the story down, it was nonsense. Leah Safian's information was in the EXIF data of the photo. I called Leah Safian. Her phone rang with an overseas ring, like doot, 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 doot. Go call somebody in Europe or Russia or Brazil or Israel or wherever. I have never called Israel, so I don't know if that's the way it rings, but I think any overseas ring sounds like that. It sounds different than a North American phone. So I presume that meant she was out of the country, maybe with Ghislaine Maxwell. Maybe she was orchestrating some sort of multimedia social engineering campaign to hide the location of Ghislaine Maxwell, to distract from where she was or whatever. But during that sequence, Dershowitz kept running his mouth and wouldn't allow me to fill him in on the details. And he just immediately dismissed it as a conspiracy theory. So, I mean, in addition to being wrong, opinionated, and objectionable, he was just rude. He said something about, oh, so they're part of the conspiracy as well. Here's a fact, Mr. Dershowitz. people conspire to do crimes all the time. And I spoke to the journalists at the New York Post, as well as the woman who evidence seems to indicate took the photo, and they both acted quite strangely when questioned about the contents of that news article that I believe are false. So I think that's good evidence that they may in fact have worked together to publish a false story, which would be a conspiracy to lie to the public. They've conspired. When two people work together to do something, that is a conspiracy, not a conspiracy theory. So his dismissive disposal of that statement was quite telling. I think people should also remember that Rupert Murdoch was married to Wendy Murdoch, and in 2018, Vanity Fair magazine asked the question, is Wendy Murdoch a Chinese spy? I don't know the answer to that question, but it's seems like a valid question to me. I'd like to know the answer to that. Wendy Murdoch somehow was involved in keeping Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump together. People can look into all that. I don't know. I'm just saying, News Corp or News International, whatever, Rupert Murdoch's company in England, was accused of hacking phones. I don't think Rupert Murdoch went to jail for that, but that sounds more like espionage than journalism. So I think it's totally within my rights to question what is going on at Fox News, what is going on at the New York Post, what the hell is going on with Alan Dershowitz, why he wants to lie about me and defame me on Del Bigtree's show. I know Del is just trying to get to the bottom of this whole thing. Del is obviously very concerned with vaccinations and dangerous vaccinations, but a lot of people don't know the details of the law, the medical science behind this, and that's the way they want it. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get to the truth. I'm not claiming to know the truth. I'm trying to find out the truth. So if you're a lawyer, if you know about the Constitution, if you're a lawyer who specializes in that, if you know, I think we need to be proactive about this and find these cases, talk to this, whoever did this in Texas. I don't know what the outcome was in Texas, but the notion that this is not going to go to the Supreme Court, I don't think is correct. I think that this Jacobson v. Massachusetts is about as obsolete as Alan Dershowitz. The wind is picking up, so I'm going to sign out. But for people who watch Crowdsource the Truth and want this kind of journalism to continue, it's extremely important that you become a sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I'm convinced that Fox News knows what Crowdsource the Truth is doing, and the New York Post does as well. I tweet at them. I contact their journalists. I don't think that Tucker Carlson is directly involved. Tucker Carlson may be trying to do the right thing. Tucker Carlson, however, whether he knows it or not, is, and I'm loath to use these type of words, but I'm going to directly explain why I say this. Tucker Carlson, at least in that scenario last night, was controlled opposition. And I say that because he's controlled by a gigantic salary paid to him by Fox News, where if he wants to say anything that they don't like, he knows that the salary is going to be cut off, and so he can't do that. I think that there's a certain edge that he can walk up to, but he can't go over. We saw that when Tucker Carlson... I got nothing. Dude. Came right at me. Threw me off a bit. But people will remember Tucker Carlson went to Vegas and was looking into the helicopter landing in the parking lot, and right away Tucker Carlson's Vegas trip got shut down. Whole Foods sent me an email that they're expanding their delivery, staff. And I am not going to put on a mask to go inside a supermarket or anywhere. It makes it really much more difficult to do these walk and talks. The subway wants you to wear a mask, so traveling around New York City with a mask, which by the way also hasn't been proven to be effective. Where is the double-blind clinical study that shows, the control, whatever it is that doctors always want to see? Where is the evidence that wearing a mask is preventing this disease? Just the other day they came out and said something like 66%, I'm surprised it wasn't 33%, something like 66% of the people in New York who have contracted coronavirus were locked down. So, I don't know. I don't think we can just have Dr. Fauci and, go back and watch my interview with Dershowitz again. He said If Dr. Fauci decides, and even if you disagree, that's the law. Dersh, Fauci's dumb opinion is no more the law than your dumb opinion, and both of you guys are ready to be put out to pasture. Alan Dershowitz is a dangerous social engineer, in my opinion, because he is spreading fear, he is spreading lies, he is inciting people, and I think the only reason he would have spoken about Jeffrey Epstein would be because he has a deliberate intention to plant a specific story and cause you to pay attention to it. And I suspect he said or did something that he did not want to say or do. Watch the Del Bigtree interview. We're watching Alan Dershowitz closely here because the way he acts, the things he says, he got real twitchy and blinky when I asked him certain questions, and I initially wrote that off to possible muscular deficiencies that might come along with age, but maybe body language experts want to look at that and decide what they think. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about Alan Dershowitz. It's difficult to walk around and look at comments and keep the stream going and all that, but I hope everybody got some benefit out of what I had to say. If you know a constitutional lawyer, if you know any lawyers, share this with them, see what they say, see what they think about what I've said about the police powers of the state, Jacobson v. Massachusetts. And by the way, the other important thing that Dershowitz forgot to mention, Jacobson was not forced to be vaccinated. He had to pay a fine. Now that opens up a whole other category of arguments about, people who are poor and have to pay a fixed fine are much more burdened than somebody who's rich. I mean, certainly, let's say the fine is $5,000. That means a lot more to me or you than it would to Donald Trump or Bill Gates or, some super millionaire. But perhaps that's for a future show. I am in touch with a number of different well-known lawyers, or at least I have inquiries out to them to hopefully appear on the show to discuss this, because obviously they're going to be more qualified and educated in this area than I am, and hopefully that will be coming soon. I want to thank everybody for watching right now. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do share this video, share the full Dershowitz interview from the other day. Don't retweet these clipped down short versions just about the vaccination, because that's what they want. They want to focus you on one simple idea. They don't want you using your brain. They don't want you thinking about what's going on. They don't want you exploring these issues and delving into the facts and details pertaining to the matters that are really important. They want to get everybody arguing, and they're doing it through social engineering. I think Rupert Murdoch knows exactly what's going on, and I think that his news empire is in part protecting Jeffrey Epstein and controlling the story. I don't have the picture loaded, but remember, Rupert Murdoch, he's very friendly with Ghislaine Maxwell. He's pictured with her. In-N-Out Burger did not want to provide their closed-circuit television footage to the FBI. And actually today, Ghislaine Maxwell was in the news in the UK in a civil case. This is the Boys Law Firm, which is representing, I believe, Virginia Giuffre against Ghislaine Maxwell. That's the law firm that Alan Dershowitz got disqualified using the advocate witness rule. I didn't even get to the point in the conversation with Alan Dershowitz where I got to thank him for introducing me to that advocate witness rule. That came in quite handy in Steele v. Goodman. We'll see where that goes. But look at the social engineering activity around everything that I'm doing. George Webb's brother constantly coming at me in Twitter with maniacal, stupid fake news. This is intended to distract people as well. So, it's interesting to see who has the same purpose, the same mission, the same tactics. I'm just observing this stuff. Anyway, we could just look at New York for a little while if you guys want. It's kind of the end of the day. It was a nice day today. The subway is definitely back up to closer to maybe 50% ridership. They were saying that it was like down 92%, but I think it's coming back. Everything is still closed. None of these orders that have come down have been based on any sound medical data, medical research. It's all based on a guess. And the notion that Jacobson v. Massachusetts controls with regard to a untested vaccine for a novel virus using a radically new form of vaccine technology, that just doesn't fly. It just doesn't fly. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great night.